This is Taylor Elwood with the Men's Mysteries podcast, and today is the day after the election, and
Yeah.
I have Sirena here. Sirena, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, and let's have a discussion about the
The
craziness.
shit. The shit. Yeah, so
Yeah,
my name's Sirena Scarlett Fatale. I do dark goddess work. I am the founder of the Path of the Dark Goddess and the Dark Goddess Coven, which is really just about it's the crossroads of witchcraft, shadow work, and transformative healing. Um, and I'm really just all about, getting the repressed feminine and finding that empowerment and working through our wounds and rising above, because like the repressed feminine, that's what the dark goddess, like one of the like archetypal energies of the dark goddess is. And um, I guess this is a great segue for me to go into why I really admire the work that you're doing. And I want to have these conversations because the who else has a deeply repressed feminine than a lot
men.
of men?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I'm actually on a journey right now to heal my relationship with the feminine, both with women, in my life, but also with the repressed feminine within myself.
Yeah.
And so I totally get it. I think that this work is absolutely crucial, and I think that what we're seeing right now is the fallout when this doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the political atmosphere here in the United States, we've had a lot of, and we've had a lot of movement towards, change and better things, over the past, couple decades. And when it's like when Hillary Clinton first started running, that was like women are starting to really step into power. And that's when like the push, well, actually we could probably say the pushback really started when Obama came in. Um, but the white men in positions of power are have been getting threatened since, like 2008. And it just keeps getting worse and worse for them, seeing like that loss of power. And it's like watching the reproductive rights being stripped away. And I'm in a state right now, I'm in Eastern Tennessee. Like abortion is not a pleasant thing right now. Like it's not a conversation that we want to have. We do need to have, but it's like you got to keep it on the hush. You got to, there's like they fucking burnt down the Planned Parenthood, like the closest Planned Parenthood in the bigger city. They burnt it down a couple years ago.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I live in Oregon, and some people will say, "Well, you're safe, Taylor. You're in a blue state." And what they don't realize is that depending on where you are in Oregon, you are not. Most of the state is red.
Yes,
Even in the areas where it's quote
the
unquote
rural.
blue, even in the areas where it's quote unquote blue, there's still a lot of conservatism. I live in Eugene, Oregon, and I see a fair amount of that every day.
Yep,
So
I went
it's
to high
not.
school there.
Yeah, so you know what
Yeah,
it's like. So, I think it's really I think that what I see, I mean, I'm feeling a combination of anger, sadness, rage, and I can't even begin to imagine what you or so many other people are feeling. I'm a white man feeling that, and I'm
yeah.
going to call that out. Like, okay, I'm a white guy. I voted for Kamala. I voted for on my conscience based on what I feel my values and beliefs. And at the end
Well,
of the
you're
day,
allowed to have the grief and the
right.
anger. You're allowed to have that for us because you have empathy and you recognize that. So, but there's power because you are you are a white dude. There is a privilege, and it's how are you going to use that privilege to carve out space and help us? And you're open and willing, and like have the grief with us, listen to us, hold space while we're fucking upset. And you're allowed to have that stuff too because that affects the women in your life.
No, it undoubtedly does. And I actually think that that is a huge part, in a sense, of connecting with the repressed feminine. For my part, it's like there is a woman in me right now that is wailing and feeling anger and rage. And I'm thinking, how can I show up and hold space for the women in my life? How can I show up for the black and brown and indigenous people of color and
LGBTQ,
LGBTQ?
all
Yeah,
of it.
exactly. All of that because I do have that privilege. So it's like I need to help create as safe a space as I can, or at least do what I can to be there. And at the same time, recognize at the end of the day that, what they really need is just for me to listen and be
Yeah.
present with them. So with
Yeah.
that in mind, here we are, where we're doing an on the
Yeah.
fly interview.
Yeah, we were supposed to just talk and catch up, and then we were gonna set it, and then I was like, you know what? That bath brought me back to life. I haven't slept. Like, I think I got like an hour and a half nap. I didn't sleep last night. I went and laid in my daughter's bed and fucking just cried. I have a 10-year-old daughter. She at a young age was like, "Mom, I think I might like girls." And I've been very supportive of that. I try not to talk a lot about my daughter. It's her business, but I just like laid in my bed before I woke or in her bed before I woke up, and I just cried for her. Of like, this isn't fair. This is not fair for her at all. And it's terrifying. And but yeah, like, I mean, but I brought back, so yeah, we're doing this on the fly, but yeah, I didn't sleep. I've made sure to eat and and engage in those things. But yeah, it's fucking insane to see the political atmosphere of like how the hell have we slid back so fucking hard when we've had so much progress in the past since 2008. And I really believe that white men in positions of power are scared of losing that power. They're scared of losing the control. And I thought we had it. I thought that the rollback on like the abortion rights would have brought out the feminine rage. It would have brought out that sacred rage. And the men fought back. They came back in droves. And that's fucking scary to see so many men who just don't give a fuck.
No, it is scary. Yeah, I was thinking about it like why did this happen? And the conclusion I've come to is that just more younger men went out in droves. They got them to come out and vote. And that just makes that clarifies the work I need to do even further
Yeah.
with men.
Yeah.
And it's, no, I had somebody say to me or comment on my post that I'd shared, last night, that I was full of fear. He's like, well, you talk about, the stuff with men all the time. Now's the time to fight, da, da, da. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And, there's a reason I do that. I talk about all that stuff because men need that healing more so than ever. And it makes it even more clear because that lashing out and doing what is happened here is a good example speaks to the fact that there is a fundamental they're operating from a place of fear.
Yeah. Fear and control
Fear and control,
is
right? Fear and
it's fear and
control.
control. And and it really sucks because I grew up with all brothers and I grew up in a very patriarchal religion. Me and my brothers, we all left the church for a lot of different reasons. One of my brothers is dead. One of my
Mm,
brothers killed himself. And um I'm not going to get into the death of my brother. I'll tell you privately, but I'm not going to talk about it
right.
right now. But he killed himself, and he was not supported a lot, and he was heavily influenced by very fucked up patriarchal things. And he's dead now. My other brother um, is very we talk 2 3 times a year. He's very I've never known him to have a girlfriend. He likes girls, but he's very commitment phobic. He's very isolated. He just rents a small room out of Portland and has his job, and he's happy with it. He's happy with it. And um my little stepbrother went totally to the right. And so the boys that I grew up with, like, and that's why I'm so like, people are like, oh, like, why do you like give pause and like care about men, is because I grew up with brothers and I see their wounds too.
Hmm.
And um my living blood brother, witnessed me go through DVs. He witnessed me go through DVs. He witnessed me in a lot of really fucked up relationships. And he's told me, he's like, when I was younger, I was on all these message boards, and on, the online space is not safe for kids. It's just not. Young
No,
men
it's
are
not.
it's young men are getting infiltrated and propagandized and poisoned by this fucked up shit. And my brother fell into that, and he said, what stopped me, he doesn't call women bitches, he doesn't use derogatory words, he does not use those words. He's like, I don't ever use those words, Serena. And he said, it's because I watched everything that you went through.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
And but he totally like was on these, the internet, and this is like really before like 4chan was like a huge thing. Like he was getting those messages online in these online spaces as a teenager. He's almost 40, so that's perspective of like, he was in spaces and seeing stuff online. And they get young boys with jokes. They get them with the jokes and the haha and the hee hee and
Well, right.
desensitizing.
And there's also, I mean, what boys are growing up with, which is kind of the locker room talk, the I
Yeah.
can't be vulnerable. I have to act a certain way. I have to show a certain face to the world. And then as a result, they're out of touch with their emotions. They're out of touch with the the feminine aspects of themselves. And then this kind of brings us into the to kind of like the work that you do, because I mean I think in a very real sense, like the dark feminine, men have this fear of it instead of a an appreciation of it and the lessons they can learn from it.
Oh
That's my
yeah.
thought and on the matter.
I I have chewed on it a lot because I work with a lot of women and LGBTQ. Those are
Hmm.
primarily the demographics that come to me. And I when we hear the dark feminine, we think man eater. We think like, this fierce, cold, independent woman. But that's not the narrative that I want to write. Because I don't want to swing the pendulum really far. I want to honor the trauma, but women usually slipped into the man eating out of because of trauma as like a trauma response, while men are just programmed into it. And so I really don't want to shift and push this narrative of being a man hater and a man eater. There's jokes around it that I make, and maybe I shouldn't. But I sit often and wonder, how can I create a pathway in the path of the dark goddess for men? Because men need that type of healing too. They need that ability. And I don't have an answer for it right now. And I know I'm going to have to do something down the line. It is something that I don't think I'll be able to do it alone, but it is a important topic and something that I have very deep passion with. I have a lot of interest in, and I talk a lot about. And there are men out there that I come across to admire me, who I talk to, who I'm like, all right, you're a decent dude. And I have this conversation about the dark goddess and the dark feminine and men, and they agree. And I end up always just leaving empty, like feeling like really sad that like I don't have a pathway for these men.
Well, I think that here's my own thought on this, and I'm not
No, you're
trying
good.
to,
I'm receptive.
no, I appreciate that. I'm receptive to everything you're sharing as well. I think that's actually right there that hits on something really important, receptivity. That's a really key element to all of this work. Both men and women have the ability to be receptive, and it's something that it's one part of the healing that men need to work on and receive is that receptivity, learning to receive, learning to connect with their sensitive hearts and really
Yeah.
pay attention to what is going on around them. Because if they were connected with their sensitive hearts, they and not pushing down the emotions, not blocking everything out, not trying to live up to a certain image, then I genuinely believe that men start to see, oh, the way that I'm showing up in the world, there is power and privilege here, but there's also a lot of disempowerment, and it's actually hurting my ability to relate to other
Yes.
people in general. and connect with
Yeah.
those people, and it's isolating me. So
Hmm.
that receptivity is a significant part of this work. And it's one of those cases where it's not on men to go to women and be like, teach me how to be receptive. That's not the point.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm sharing.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that there is a nonetheless a key aspect here because men are so uncomfortable receiving. I see it all the time. I'll tell a man, "Hey, you were really good or you did this or that," and he'll get uncomfortable. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like I can't be seen that way. But it's like, well, that's and I used to be that way. I've
Yeah.
learned to accept it. And because I have learned to receive it, it's also helped me to receive all the stuff that isn't so wonderful or pleasant or good or but be able to take it and situate it. So like, today I wake up and I'm like thinking to myself, man, I'm not happy at all. This is a really shitty day. And I can receive that and receive the anger and the fear and everything else that other people are feeling and also recognize that like, yeah, this is a call to action. And part of that is at the same time, some of that action is continue to receive, continue to
Yeah.
be open.
And right now, the messages that I'm getting and I'm seeing is yes, you have a call to action. Yes, we do have a call to action, but right now there needs to be some fucking grief.
Yeah.
There
Hmm.
needs to be fucking grief and sorrow and a moment of just resting and just processing the emotions and then how are we going to move forward? And so, but I love that you are as a man sitting here and being like, "All right, I have work that I have to do, and I have something that the world needs, and I want to do it." And I just really want to commend you immensely for for doing this. And because, I always side eye men's coaches and men's groups because of the echo chamber in which the right and the toxic masculinity has created. And so there are those spaces. And so I'm just a sussy bitch though. Like, but I always side eye, but I really love to see a truly authentic um, pathway that you're creating.
Well, this work hasn't come easy. I mean, I think that men have to come to terms with the way they've harmed the feminine.
Yeah.
And
And
that is, and that's a real ownership right there.
and so many of them take it personally. They
Yeah.
take it personally where you may inherently not have been the one to build this system. You may not have been the one to do this. You may not have been this, but you turn a blind eye
You turn a
to the
blind
men who
eye,
are.
right? You turn a blind eye to the men who are, or you perpetuate in your own actions. I mean, I've not always
Yeah.
been the man that I am now. I've
Yeah. I
certainly
mean,
done
I can be
some things that I
toxic.
look at. I've certainly done some things, and I say that because I think it's really important for men to own that
Yeah.
because you can't change the turning of a blind eye until you look towards yourself and you see, oh, here's all the ways I showed up. Here's all the
Yeah.
harm I did.
Yeah.
And
And I
now
mean,
I
but I
see it
think
with
that's
other men.
just I think that's just human nature though
Yeah.
of like having to do that, but men are typically very unreceptive and really do struggle with that process. Um, and I think a lot of it is just that inability to turn inwards and do the reflection and honor the emotions and take that accountability. And also emotional regulation, like shut up and stop crying, be a man. That's not teaching men how to emotionally regulate. That's teaching them to internalize and also not talk about their shit and not take responsibility for their stuff. And it just, I don't know. It's crazy. I don't know how things are gonna be, but fuck. I'm gonna drink some water and think about it for a minute. I don't know where I'm going with this. I keep cutting you off. I'm sorry. I'm a
No, it's okay.
yapper.
This is a fluid conversation. I kind of expected that anyway, and that's all right. I don't,
Yeah.
we're making space here. And you're right, there is a
Yeah.
grieving process that needs to occur. I think that a huge part of like of my own work is what I call the advanced inner, or I have a class about teaching advanced inner alchemy of wintering, but it's really
Yeah.
about learning to tap into the rhythms of winter, but also the grief and the endarkenment.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. We have such similar work in such a lot of ways because I talk a lot about the different seasons and, winter and like moving in with with the rhythms of winter and how it's very like that's a very dark goddess energy that's like going into the underworld, which is like the symbolism and the archetype of shadow work, of going within. And there's growth within it. Like you think like people think going underground and going into the underworld. Well, seeds have to go underground to like germinate, and there's a lot of growth that goes under. But there's a cracking open process the seed has to go through. But yeah, there is like darkness, the darkness and the winter and just slowing down and resting and decaying, like there's like a decay of like the former self that we have to go through as we shed and we let go and we go into this decay part. But that's where the growth happens. That's where, I always say from the decay of my past self, my future self thrives.
Yeah, it's true. I think of the underworld journey of Inanna and
Yeah.
how she basically has to strip away everything. She's going down there to quote unquote get her husband back, but like she's stripping away everything that she is and having to expose herself and be really vulnerable. And that strikes
Oh,
me as one of the aspects of the Dark Goddess
yeah. Yeah. It's
and a lesson
Inyana's
for
descent's
anybody to
fun.
learn.
Yeah, it's really I actually really love. I actually did a ceremony this past summer, a dark goddess ceremony that was built around Inyana's descent and having to shed and greet the dark goddess in a labyrinth. It was really fun. It's actually going into my book of future things to do. And so um yeah, I don't really know. It's just so scary to see the numbers of men who voted against who like I mean in my eyes it's you're voting against women's right. You're voting against LGBTQ. You're voting within your own favor. It's scary to see that number and it's also scary to see the number of women, like white women who did.
Well, yeah, there's definitely something about that that's very frightening to me, because it further enshrines patriarchal thinking
Yeah.
and perspective,
And
and it's like you're voting against yourself, but at the same time, I think that the what really stands out to me also is just what it says and speaks to the character of what's going on that we essentially have this just this very hateful rhetoric that's been unleashed and really somebody who genuinely believes it. I mean, he's pulling from the book of Hitler, basically.
right, that is the scariest part of it all is seeing the fascism, the dictatorship, like the playbooks in which he is utilizing to get into positions of power. That is the scary part. And you know, it's where was I reading? I was reading something where it's like people like that, they don't see it because they're benefiting, because they have safety within it. They're feeling safe. He sat here and poked all these trigger points and poked all these perceived pain points and these fears and poked it and aggravated it and then says, well, I have the solution to keep you safe, to keep you secure. And it's like the worst form of like marketing and branding ever.
Yeah, it is. Uh, and it's I have a roommate. He does a lot of work around racial trauma and equity work. He's doing a tour right now, and he said that last night justified his work, and I agree
Yeah.
with him. And I was saying like, are you safe? Are you doing well? He's like, I'm worried about you. You're a white-bodied man, and I'm worried about you today. Like that was his fear because he
I'm
was
worried
just
about you too.
it's an interesting thing, and I kind of sit with that because I feel like with this, and this is really I'm saying this really to any white-bodied man out there, and I hope that you receive it that yeah, like this is the call for us to do this work we actually have to step up now and do the work
Yeah.
to make
But
the
there's
people around us that don't have the privilege that we have safer. And that means that we have to
yeah.
actually take a risk and reach out to the people who have essentially gone and help create this very unsafe environment for everybody else and say, like, look, we're not going to obey. we're not going to agree. We're not going to, and you can't either. You have to actually break away from this kind of,
So I want to shift into a kind of a conversation of how white men can
hmm
use their privilege to facilitate change, because I have seen men go into leftist spaces, go into queer spaces, go into play people of color spaces and have great intentions and totally fuck shit up, get aggressive,
I agree.
overtalk, and so like let's have this conversation. Like let's
Yeah.
have this conversation of like how can white men use their position of power but also respect the spaces and be safe for those that they are being allies to.
Yeah, I'd love to have that conversation. So what are your recommendations? What is it that I, as a white man, can be doing? I think one thing we touched on was listening and
Well, that right
receptivity.
there, that right there of sitting back and listening
hmm
and knowing how to transmute your anger and rage into construction and letting the minorities do what they need to and just hold that space and say how do I need to, but also when you are in those spaces where it's just a bunch of dudes doing dude shit, like calling them out, holding them accountable, not giving into fear of like I might get my ass kicked, I might get like, but finding out how to speak to them in a way that they can be receptive, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, I'm ready for you to take it, but that's really a general basis. But what do you think?
I think that's absolutely correct. It's going to involve having those hard conversations, but doing it in a way where it's like, all right, what can I do to help these men become receptive? What can
And
I
there's a
do?
lot of emotional regulation and
Right?
knowing
There's a
how to
lot.
have control of those emotions because, you know, men are quick to anger.
Well, men are
And
quick to
when
anger
other,
because anger is the one acceptable
yeah,
emotion they've been told they're allowed to feel. And getting underneath that anger to the shame, to the
yeah.
fear, the anxiety, and all the other emotions is where this work really needs to go.
And
It's inter
so it's, go ahead.
I was going to say it's interesting because I think that one of the fundamental issues that I see from a lot of men who are quote unquote progressive that aren't into the men's movement is that they don't understand that that's what's really going on. And so they see it and they're like, well, you're you're trying to organize around men and get them to maybe be fascist. I've had one man actually accuse me of that with some of the stuff that I've shared, and I'm like, I'm not a fascist, and I have no, but I get that he probably doesn't fundamentally does not understand that this is work really about getting men to connect
And
with those parts of themselves that they have denied.
also, like I mentioned earlier, there is a big male movement, men's movement, and men's circles and men's spaces and spirituality that
That are
do still
toxic.
perpetuate that are toxic.
Yeah.
And so, and even me, like I'm gonna be honest, I side-eyed you. I watched your shit for a bit. I was like, the fuck is this dude? The fuck? I side-eyed you, but I've just seen a lot of stuff and and you can't take it personally. I just had to see what you were about. Um, so yeah, you are going to get that lashback, but I think one of the hugest things of men who want to support, want to be allies, one of the biggest things that they have to do is start their own internal healing.
Yes.
That's like the biggest thing. Like just focus on your healing, show up and call out and hold the men in your lives accountable and have those uncomfortable conversations with them until you're blue in the face and more.
Yeah. No, I agree. And as my roommate Kokai would say, has said to me, he's like, you're gonna have to be willing to go and hug those men.
Yeah,
You're gonna have to be willing to put your body between me and them and hug those men. He's like, that's gonna be your act of bravery because you don't know what's
yeah,
gonna happen. And he's right.
yeah. Yep, and that's the reality. And um I will just say this, and I say this because I mean it and it's something that needs to be heard, but you do have it right, and I see you doing the right steps. And, you know, this just conversation of men just need to continue their healing and learning how to step back and let like the feminine run wild, let the women, let them do it, and just create a sacred, safe container. One of my, a really good friend of mine, I grew up in Arizona. I might have spent time in Eugene, but I spent some time in Arizona as an adult before I moved out here to Tennessee. And so that has a huge Native American population.
Hmm.
And one of my Native American male friends, who was very pivotal in me getting off of drugs and helping me through my horrible relationship, and someone that I hold very near and dear today, told me that, his tribe was devastated. The men were broken hearted because the white men, quote unquote, came in and snagged up their women and raped their women and did this, and it broke them. It broke them immensely, and they didn't know how to recover from it. And because they didn't really focus a whole lot on a lot of genocide, it was, take the children, take the women. Like it,
Well, that's a
there's
form
a
of
reason.
genocide right there.
It is. It's just not the so violent
Right.
form. Thank you.
Right.
Um, but he said, and he really was the first one to give me this concept of what healthy masculine is. And he said, in some of our ceremonies that we do, the men circle around the fire and we feed the fire, and then we step back and we let the women do their thing. And we just create this circle around the women as like a form of protection to let them do their thing. And we just make sure the fire keeps going. He's like, that's all we do. He was like, and that is a perfect example of what a man should do. He needs to create that healthy container and feed the fire.
Feed the fire. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I went to an event in it was the fall equinox, and it was an event where both men and women were there, and the women went in to eat, and the men were held back by the leaders of the event, and they said, "We want to be very clear. This isn't a hookup. This isn't a festival. We're here because we're doing our work and they're doing their work, and we're going to hold the space so they can do their work. And we're going to go slow because the feedback we get is that men go too fast. So we are going to go slow, and we are going to just hold that space and let them tell us when they're ready for us to be there." And it was such powerful healing work. It spoke to the importance of creating that space and exactly what you're talking about, because we need to have those spaces where men and women can come together, and men need to
Yeah.
understand that just because they're in that space, nothing's going to necessarily happen and shouldn't necessarily happen. We need to go slow.
And here's the thing, we live in such a hyper individualized society where we feel like we have to heal alone. And there's a lot of unhealthy, hyper individualized healing stuff out there. But here's the thing, how can I heal my wounds with men if I never make friends with men? If I don't learn how to connect with healthy men, not even on a sexual, romantic level? Like the wounds in which I carry with men, there is a point where they need to be healed by healthy connections with other men, and men, same. And so there is a level of, we can't, I don't want to separate like this. That's kind of where I'm at with like with my stuff, is like I'm working a lot with, women and LGBTQ, but I don't, there is a point where I want some form of integration, and not bringing, I still want to keep the spaces safe, but there needs to be, and that's and I don't have the answers. I'm not going to know, but it is something that I'm chewing on often, of, men also, we need to learn how to integrate together, and learn how to heal together. Like we can't do it by separating men and women. We just can't.
No, there's a time and a space to have some separation. Like I will
Yes.
say, but there's also, but we also have to come back together, and we have to do it
Yeah.
in a way where everyone is able to be in that presence, and it's not about trying to get something from someone. It is
Yeah.
instead about just holding that space and genuinely connecting
Just,
with all of
yeah,
the emotions, everything that's going on.
yeah,
You know, I'm going down to do another weekend in beginning of December, kind of for the same purpose. It's called His Weekend, and it's
yeah,
a weekend where it's both men and women are there,
hmm,
and it's facilitating men doing their healing around you know the feminine.
yeah.
And I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like. I'm looking forward to going through it. I know the work I have that I'm bringing to it, but and I think that that's absolutely essential. They also have a her weekend, and it's the same thing, only it's
I
reversed.
love
It's for her,
this.
right? And
I need to get to fucking Oregon.
it's actually in It's actually in
It's in
California.
Cali,
It's
close,
in
close
Cali,
enough.
but yeah, but it is but I mean it's one of those things where one of the reasons I'm going to do this too is because I definitely want to become a facilitator with this
Yeah,
system and help to support it because we more than ever we need this work. I think of
yeah,
how much in my own life I spent isolated from men
yeah,
but also isolated from women, not really
yeah.
able to connect with anyone. And a lot of times, the biggest problem that men have, and this is a huge problem, is they put everything that they're dealing with into one basket, the basket of their romantic relationship, and they
Mhm.
expect their partner to do the emotional labor. And that is a huge part of what leads to this disempowerment in society in general, because how
Yeah.
can they possibly understand what that woman is going through when they're putting everything on her and they're not willing to take ownership of their work?
I can kind of relate to that because I have like borderline personality disorder. And I part of one of the things about borderline personality disorder is we will have a tendency to attach ourselves to like one person and like expect them to like do all the things for us. And that's something that I've had to unpack of like um I can't expect this one person, and it's not always romantic. Sometimes like I will find a friend, but like if I'm like interested in a guy, like I will like latch on and dump all of my stuff too. And I've had to unpack of like learning my own emotional regulation, learning how to process my own stuff, but also building a community, and recognizing. And that's where relationship anarchy has like really been phenomenal of like understanding the different dynamics and things that each individual relationship that I have. Sorry, there's like a fruit fly. Yeah, but
Go ahead.
what each what each relationship uh what it brings to me and what we connect over, and not even like on it's just helped me like deconstruct what relationships are, and not just romantic, but understanding why this each person in my life is special to me, and what we connect over, and what we bring to the table, and what our relationship is about. And that's helped me personally learn how to not dump all my shit on people, and also emotional regulation, and my own healing with borderline personality disorder.
Well, right, and yes, it does go both ways. First, I want to acknowledge that because
Yeah,
that's an important point to share, and I've certainly been in those relationships where I've had that experience as well. And I mean, you know, community is the medicine. I genuinely believe
community
that
is.
community is the medicine. I don't, you know, I think that it's when we come together in community that we are able to do our grieving process, where we're able to do all the different things that we're doing. I mean, I woke up this morning and I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling really alone. And then now I'm having this conversation with you. And I can't speak for you, but
Yeah.
I can say for
No,
myself that
no,
this
it's
feels
been
like a
really
healing experience just in and
it's
of
been really
itself.
good for me. It's been really good for me too, like, because I no, you're good. We good. It's mutual. Um, and I know that you have something you have to do, so I want to wrap up with this, just to give you that time and space, to prepare for your next thing. So, and I think that's what's like the most horrible thing about where we have been politically for almost, the past decade, especially, is the division that it's created.
Hmm.
Is that the division that has been put into play to divide us. And no, I'm not sitting here saying, we need to go make peace with people who think I shouldn't have rights, or, think LGBTQ should be eliminated, and conversion therapies and bans and stuff like that,
No,
because
no, not at all.
they need to integrate that probably a little bit more than we do. And I'm just, trying to be a little nice, but what it has created is a very us against them mentality. And I think that on our end, on our side, is we're just tired of trying to get to be seen and heard, and it's at this point of like, you're not a safe person for me or my people to be around, so I don't want you here. And then they're like, oh well, you're being this, but realistically the huge division, and this is how they control. You see this in the like the prison systems where they used to segregate due to race. um it's an absolute phenomenal method of control and manipulation to divide us where we can't get along, and putting in that fear of, your rights or something here is going to happen on their end, like, poking at whatever it is and creating that division where they do not feel safe, and they have to step into this whatever the fuck they're doing, this bigotry, this fucked up shit, and feel like they're victims and stuff. But it's at the end of the day, it's the division and the separation and the hyper individualization, because a lot of people voted for self-interest. Do you know how many people out here in Tennessee said, I'm just voting for whoever makes sure that my taxes go down and my gas is cheaper?
I believe it. No, I believe it.
That's a huge push that you hear out here, is I'm just voting for the person who makes my groceries and my gas cheaper.
Well, and I think that a huge part of this is that we do have to own and recognize our self-interest and then ask ourselves how much is that ultimately serving us?
Yeah, and I get it, like I want cheaper shit too, but I'm more concerned about community.
Right. Well, because in the short term, the self-interest seems to benefit you, but then in the long term, it just isolates you further and
Doesn't.
further.
It doesn't. And so
Yeah.
community is key. Community is key, in a lot of healing. And clearly, there's decades of work that will undo the messes. But then again, that's maybe me coming from a slightly privileged point as like a white person. Like, how much privilege and how much unity has there ever been? Not really, when you look at it from other people's points of views. So,
Not
and
even when you look at
experiences,
it the
not point of
long view
views.
with history. Even when you
Yeah,
look at it from the long view of history, I mean, there's really
yeah,
never been a period of unity, you
of
know.
true unity,
Yeah.
yeah. And all over the world. It's not just a United States or this era. You're right. It's something that's part of like human. I mean, we can go into some stuff. I don't want to tie you up too long, but community is just, it's important. And um
I think the difference is that now in this time era, the world is more connected than it has ever been, not
yes,
just through
yes,
technology, but through other things.
yes,
And this is why community can become the medicine because this is the opportunity for different voices and experiences to be heard. And if we can make that space for that and
yeah.
allow for the healing that can occur, and the
We have
discomfort
the
and all the
ability.
everything else, then yes, there can be a difference. But and that may sound utopian to some of the people that are watching or listening to this, but I genuinely believe that it is the way forward. We have to be able to
I
say
don't
to
want to
each
go
other, can I
back.
be okay? Can I be okay with you? Can you be
Yeah,
okay with me? And create that relational connection that allows us to see each person as a genuine human being instead of objectifying them, which is what's occurring.
yeah, absolutely. And so, I don't know. I don't know. I feels like we almost had a taste of something beautiful and it was ripped from us. And maybe that's me coming from a privileged American point of view, but I just felt like it was a step in the right direction and we just took 10 steps backwards.
I hear that.
So for now, rest, regroup,
Grieve.
grieve, grieve, be fucking angry. Like I call it sacred rage because that's when we take this anger and we put it into something constructive and we utilize it for change.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, Serena, where can people find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
So I am on pathofthedarkgoddess.com.
Mhm.
Sirena Scarlett Fatale. Sirena is actually spelled Sirena. It's pronounced Sirena. Sirena Scarlett Fatale.
Serena.
And yeah, Sirena. Yee.
Serena.
I'll tell you that story sometime. So And I'm on Threads. I'm finding a really fun place on Threads. Like Threads is a really beautiful algorithm that I'm fully enjoying right now. And so I'm on there, just pathofthedarkgoddess.com. I'm gonna eventually maybe go on TikTok. I'm trying to get my I'm trying to like convince myself that I want to be there. But it's a phenomenal, it's the algorithm. I'm trying to find good, awesome algorithms, and the algorithm on TikTok can go one of two ways. So but yeah, it's just pathofthedarkgoddess.com. I got a newsletter. I have a monthly membership program available where it's the crossroads of shadow work, witchcraft, and transformative healing. And I also do one on one journey, like guided journey experiences as well. I will be honest, at this time, I am open to working with men, but I will need to screen. And a lot of my stuff is kind of geared more towards the femme, but I can make it work if a man wants to work with me.
Okay, good. That's good to know. Well, I thank you for coming on to the show. It was a spontaneous show. We were going to do this, but it just
Yeah,
ended up being, but I'm glad that we
it
were open
flowed.
to
Me
it,
too.
and
It flowed good.
it flowed really good. And I will actually plan on trying to get this up maybe even later today. So I'm going to
Look
stop the
around, find out,
recording
girl.
now, but thank you all for watching. And please, please, please take care of yourselves, do your grieving, and
Yes.
reach out to each other. This is really
Yes.
important right now.
Community.
This is not the time to isolate. This is the time to connect.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on.